right, everybody. Welcome to another Friday. I appreciate you being here, especially on the Friday before fall break. How many people are traveling somewhere this weekend? Thank you. Thank you for sticking around. Thanks for booking a later flight, train ticket, whatever it may have been. Appreciate that. Good to have you here. When I've come up here and introduced our guests before, a lot of times you hear me talk about how deep of experts they are in a given area, or kind of how much they've done to advance a given field, or really kind of pioneered. Our guest today is that, but the more you read and understand her background, the more you go, damn, is that a wide spectrum of things you've done. Wow, I feel like I have done so little in my life and I'm so unaccomplished. But she remained humble kind of throughout all of that. What am I talking about? She was a valedictorian of her high school. She's a two-time U of M Dearborn grad. She's a trained EMT and firefighter. She was the social entrepreneurship in residence at NASA, which is a position I wouldn't have even thought existed at any point in time. When she was there, she founded a social enterprise she's going to kind of unpack for you and talk to you about today. That social enterprise has gone on to create an entire movement of open source technology within that field. To my point about her being humble, she doesn't even refer to herself as the CEO of the company. She refers to herself as the catalyst, which is a really interesting thought we'll unpack. She's crowdfunded over $350,000, but before any of that, again, she was a student just like you, unsure of what she wanted to do, unsure of what the future held, unsure of what major she wanted. Please help me welcome our friend, Samantha Snabes. Thanks for making the trip up from Texas. Appreciate you doing that, especially amidst the shutdown.
Technology issues, that's why I'm in hardware.
Love it. Here's the deck.
Awesome.
Take them through your journey.
Yeah. So first of all, I'm so honored to be here. Full disclosure, I was like a super senior at University of Michigan, Dearborn. And then kind of the same thing with my MBA. So I am not the sharpest tool in the toolkit, but I'm very determined. And I'm just so thankful to connect with you guys and hope to follow your careers after this. Dearborn. So a couple things about me, I guess, that might be helpful. I am from like Wayne Westland, Inkster, Romulus, and ever since I was a kid, about 3 years old, people would ask me what I wanted to be, and I said I wanted to be an astronaut. And I was really blessed that there was this astronaut actually working in Ann Arbor, Tony England, that mentored me because I went to space camp on a scholarship, and I was going through the white pages after space camp because they gave us a book of all the past and current presidents.
The white pages were a phone book.
Oh yeah, it was a phone book.
For
I'm in my 40s, sorry. So I come back from space camp in 4th grade. I'm all fired up, still really want to be an astronaut. And I have this leaflet from space camp that lists all the astronauts and the states they hailed from. So I go through the white pages, and Tony England's phone number's in there, who became a dean in the Michigan system. And he's just a really cool guy. Anyway, so I call him and leave a voicemail, or on the answering machine. I leave a message, because I call him during dinner time. And I'm like, hey, I'm in 4th grade. I'm going to be an astronaut. I hear you're close to me. Can we meet? And he responds. So that was really cool, and then a number of other astronauts in the community. And what I learned from them, because I'm a first-generation college student, is that I'd have to go to college. So I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go to college. Hadn't quite figured out that part. I was always pretty entrepreneurial. Funny story, I got into college, and I showed up at orientation, and they said, what's your major? And I said, astrophysics. Like, that's what Tony England said was cool. And they're like, we don't have that, dummy. So I proceeded to take a tour throughout the U.S., kind of hacking my way through college. Ended up at Dearborn, Mr. England, and he's told me that I needed some research experience. Well, I'd already been in college for a hot minute, taking this national tour, and I was like, how am I going to get research experience? So I ended up getting a job through an organization I volunteered at a lab here outside of North Campus in the Domino's Farms complex. And it was a life science company at that time called Astron Biosciences. And they were working on a DARPA grant. I didn't know what DARPA was. But they let me basically like clean the glassware and hang out. And eventually I got to run a technology that they were developing that was a little bit in competition from their own device. And it was called a bioreactor. And not knowing what I was doing, I was really proud to like hit the milestones and be under budget. Didn't know that most people like milked it for every dollar. And through that process with the Army, we made it to what's called phase 3. Well, phase 3, if you guys get an SBIR, a Small Business Innovation Research Grant, or a contract with DARPA, is commercialization. And so my former boss became my partner, and we took the money that we had to apply for the patent that you see here and a couple others, and I started a life science company. But what's interesting about that whole story, right, is I was accruing a lot of student loan debt, and I knew I couldn't start a company and pay my student loans. So what I did is I got a second degree. That's why I have both a BS and a BA. And I also really wanted to do this. So I heard about this thing called Microgravity University when you're a student. And it allows you to design an experiment for NASA and to fly it in the Vomit Comet. But the trick is you still have to be an undergrad. So I pursued the second degree so I could fly in the Vomit Comet, which was really cool and a pretty amazing experience. And it was during that time that a dean here in Ann Arbor at a class I took in psychology said, hey, if you're going to start a business and you are deferring your undergrad, have you thought about getting an MBA? Because that would allow you to continue to defer on your student loans. So I ended up getting 2 concentrations doing that. And it was through my friends that I met in Microgravity University that I connected with at NASA that invited me to my next job. So fast forward here, there's a quick break I just skipped over. I ended up selling the life science company. And around that period of time, I had stayed in touch with this Microgravity University program. The organizers for NASA running it became some good friends of mine. And they said, hey, NASA's starting this new thing called citizen science and open innovation. And the average age of a NASA employee at the time was quite old. It was like in their 40s or 50s. And they said, our director wants someone under the age of 30 that has sold a life science company that loves space to try and help support these initiatives. Well, it was a pretty short list. I had applied to be an astronaut once or twice, and so I was invited to work with my friends at Wiley KBR, supporting space life sciences, and then NASA headquarters. And it was around that period of time that I started volunteering with an organization called Engineers Without Borders, NASA Johnson Space Center. So seen here is a photograph from some time I had the honor of spending in Muganero, Rwanda. Now, I think I'm really funny, right? So I was taking this blade of grass there and trying to make farting noises on it. But I was quickly humbled because I watched those same pieces of grass become a way to stitch together a burlap sack when we were collecting pineapple, and the way that it could be used as a tool. Around that period of time, the open source 3D printing movement was starting, as well as the maker movement. And in my role with NASA, I was first, leading these citizen science initiatives, getting to work with different groups, including the International Red Cross and other aid groups, thinking about translation, Engineers Without Borders, to remote areas with confined spaces. And it was, in that experience, I was collecting a lot of like-minded peers. And so my peers at NASA, who were also sometimes working with me in the maker movement on behalf of NASA, and I started to come up with a concept to bring 3D printers into remote areas. Now, just for context, we knew that the requirement, right? So what we didn't know in this business thesis we were forming was that they would have to be, we were forming requirements for a business model, right? So we learned that the printers had to be low cost. And the lowest cost printer at that time was the one that you see circled on this chart from 2013 from 3D Hubs, and that's the printers that can print directly from extruded plastic, particularly like a rope-like material some of you guys may have used called filament. So me, thinking I'm funny, I love toilets, printed a little green toilet that's a flushing toilet that's supposed to represent a composting toilet I was using in Rwanda to start to market this idea and to collect other friends about the opportunity to make an open source project that could allow us to have a printer that was lightweight and low powered that could go into the communities that we'd been volunteering with. Around that time, too, we were also proposing that it be toilet size, because what we heard when we started to survey groups we volunteered with and with my friends at NASA, and when we talked to USAID, is that the printers had to be a human scale. People wanted to make birthing stools, they wanted to make composting toilets, they wanted to make tools, things that you could really use. And they also needed to be under $10,000, which is the threshold for a lot of like the aid groups for their purchasing threshold. So I started to shop this idea around. This is a bar outside of Johnson Space Center called Boondoggles, and I got more people behind this idea. But we realized that we needed a little bit of capital to do that. So we started to develop a deck and resources and doing some storytelling like you would do, right, in your market research, to explain how we would come in the middle here of this landscape between desktop printers and the human scale 3D printers, which we learned was a $37 billion market opportunity. So fast forward, I go to officer school because in parallel I still want to be an astronaut, and I hear if you become a pilot in the Air Force that maybe you'll get more points on your next application. And when I get out of officer school, I learned that we had gotten into a program called Startup Chile, which is an accelerator that gives you $40K to start or scale your idea in Latin America. And then my boss at NASA had liked the status and said, guess you're not coming back to work. And I went to Chile, and what I learned when I got there is that the program was going to have a booth at the tech festival called South by Southwest. Now, granted, I was living in Texas at the time, in Houston. South by Southwest is in Austin. Startup Chile had a booth, and I said, okay, if we invent a toilet-sized 3D printer under $10,000 in 8 weeks, can we launch it live at your booth? And I'm going to build a Kickstarter campaign, because when I was bringing in lectures at NASA doing open innovation, everyone that had done crowdfunding or 3D printing was like using Kickstarter, and they were getting a lot of money. And I was like, it's guaranteed we're going to get more resources. So they're like, yeah, sure, you guys pull it off, we'll make it happen. So we launched our printer live on Kickstarter. I built the campaign from Chile, the team built it in the printer in Texas, and it was funded in 27 hours. We were instantly in 23 countries, and it was much bigger than a garage operation. And we realized at that time what we didn't make was an open source project, but really we were making a business. So our friend, astronaut Ron Guerin, got us some free space in the corner of a Lockheed Martin building. There was a government shutdown actually that year as well, 2013. Super convenient. So people came out and helped us build the printers, set up the factory with their kids, and the whole NASA community was really engaged. As we go a little bit further, we continue to now run a Ponzi scheme where hopefully we deliver on time. We take your money in pre-orders, and we develop a printer for you. We started doing custom solutions, because what's a little bit unique about us is we don't have an investment. So we're what's called bootstrapped. We're still open source. We make the printers ourselves in the United States, dirty fingernails, sometimes broken hands, and we keep the supply chain as short as possible. So that is kind of a unique business model. It's really difficult, but it allows us also to now, because we do them in-house, to do custom solutions. So over the time, we've made bigger and bigger printers. What you'll notice with some of the printers that you see on there, we're now in over 60 countries. We've generated, I think, over $40 million in revenue, so we've been profitable since our first day, and $20 million in grants, contracts, and awards, is that some of them have the bucket on top. And that's because as we think about our social mission, which is the core of what Re3D does, what we learned is that feedstock, that rope-like material, maybe 2/3 of you have used, we call filament, it can be still really hard to get in remote areas. It also can dry out over time, and it can be expensive. So we started to pursue this vision to 3D print directly from garbage. So initially, it was with water bottles that we would grind up, like you see here. And now it's moved on to other things that we can talk about later. But we started to develop what's called Gigabot X. We also put that on Kickstarter. It was crowdfunded. And what we learned with that platform, just like our first one, is that the user base was much bigger than just people that wanted to print with garbage. It allows you to print with pellets, which is kind of a trend right now in 3D printing, which takes the cost down of your feedstock by like up to 1/30. It also allows you to print with materials that can't be put into that rope-like material. So kind of further expanded our profit angle as like a for-profit, nonprofit. But that's a little bit about us. I hope that's helpful just for context and to share that you don't have to have the plan quite figured out when you get started. Sometimes you just kind of stumble into it like I did, mainly because I just loved volunteering and I love space.
It's an amazing story. So to your point about not having to have it all figured out, for the students out there who are like, I want to tackle a social problem. I want to address a thing. You didn't feel like you really had full scope of what you were getting into, but you did have an understanding that the price point had to be below a certain amount. How did you determine that was a place to start? And how did you then further validate that, like, okay, that's the ledge we're going to start on, this is working?
Yeah, so the 10K came out of, kind of my second role as a NASA contractor was the social entrepreneur in residence for NASA headquarters. And that was really cool because I got to help support the World Food Prize. I was growing the relationship between Engineers Without Borders and NASA. There was going to be a NASA, like a Peace Corps, like Space Corps almost at one point. And I was working with like the Red Cross and USAID, RIP. And then the groups that I met traveling in Nicaragua and Rwanda and beyond, and they were all saying, like, listen, a lot of times, particularly when it comes to aid, there's some autonomy and decision in purchasing up to $10,000. So that kind of became the mark at the time that we were trying to stay below. This was in 2009 to 2012.
Did you already know that that was going to be the customer base, or was that kind of a hypothesis?
Oh yeah, so that's where we got lucky. So we were just hyper fixated on these very rural communities in Latin America and the continent of Africa that we had gotten to know. But let me tell you, nobody from Muganero, Rwanda backed the Kickstarter campaign. Instead, it was some of the largest companies in the world. And the Kickstarter staff's calling us saying, we've never had so many people call and email in saying, how does my accounting department set up a Kickstarter campaign to buy this thing that hasn't even been made yet? So yeah, the whole thing was quite accidental in that. What people call our type of technology, if you're in defense or if you serve like the aid community, is dual use. And so really, we ran at the requirements thinking about one user group, but by putting it on Kickstarter and getting it outside of our little NASA bubble, we learned there was a lot of other people that needed a low-cost human-scale 3D printer.
Unpack dual use for them, because this is a really important and increasingly popular, from what I'm picking up, kind of trend. What does dual use mean? Give them that.
Yeah, well, you'll probably hear about it, especially right now as the National Defense Strategy and National Security Strategy is kind of going through that rewrite. You'll hear about it in terms of defense, is how it's often used. But typically, dual, so too. It means that you have kind of like a parallel market. And that's where Re3D's gotten really lucky too, because our technology in general is what's called a broad-based technology, so it's used by a lot of different groups. But a lot of times when people have broad-based technologies, they might only focus on the defense vertical or only focus on libraries or whatever their vertical is. By being dual use, you're kind of mining two streams. And that's really important in hardware, particularly with defense investments. They want to make sure that if the government shuts down, you can still pay the bills, right? And you could substitute defense for something else, but it's kind of just having that second line you can draw into. For that reason, the business model that we started to track to over the time was to have 50% of our sales our revenue come from hardware sales and services, and then 50% from grants, contracts, and awards. And they kind of save each other. By design, it's helpful for us because when we're trying to make a 3D printer under $10,000, we weren't thinking about that would have lifetime customer support. That's also our big thing too. What it would look like as this technology evolves. If anyone has used a 3D printer, at some point things probably haven't worked well, right? Everyone's always pointing out that it still has a long way to go in development. We have to find a way to pay for that, not having an investor, while we're selling a product across multiple countries. So that dual use angle is really helpful to try and fund R&D in addition to steady state sales.
And to your point, you're safeguarding against a collapse in one vertical or the withdrawal of a client in one vertical in the area, which is putting you in a position to then kind of have that backing. And it's also evident that, and I love how you've touched on this in other conversations, the value of embracing ugly babies and embracing what isn't perfect. What does that mean for Re3D, and how did that play a part in your story of putting it out there?
Yeah. Well, first of all, 3D printing does still have a long way to go. We're the first to admit that. And sometimes you have to take some risk and get it out there and see how people are going to break your machine. Also, if you all have your phone out, you can Google Gigabot Kickstarter 2013, and when you see the photo of our campaign, it is fugly. Like the hardware, the Notional hardware that we launched at that booth, it has like the electrical box on the ground. You'll see there's wires sticking out. We took a shot in the living room. There was no like glitzy marketing campaign around it. It was pretty rough. But the blessing of doing that is, again, we were outside of our social bubble. We got to get Fortune 500 companies that we had no contact with before. Now is what we call our micro investors, our early customers, who were giving us active feedback as we were trying not to deliver late and trying to improve the hardware before they even got it.
Yeah, and to your point about that active feedback, you also seem to really embrace the notion of failing fast and getting that feedback to inform how to then iterate and go forward, which is the same thing that Sam was talking about last week in terms of being messy, playing, tinkering, being willing to go out there even though it's not perfect. Engineers, that means you. It's okay that it's not perfect. Put your thing out there to the world. You'll figure it out along the way. Part of you figuring out along the way was you being in a situation that you would have never envisioned when a hurricane came through and damn near wiped out your product. What happened?
We get damn near wiped out all the time. But yeah, 2017 was especially awful. I kind of feel like, I was just thinking about this on the flight up. Since 2017, probably to now, it's like some crisis that's like always in front of us. But 2017 was really critical. Again, we're bootstrapped. And there is, again, I'm going to continue to plug the SBIR program, also RIP right now. Hopefully that'll get undone very quickly. But there are resources for you to start a company now. I mentor individuals all the time who are in college applying for their first research grant supported by the government to launch their big idea in hardware. But so we learned about that a little bit later. So we didn't have that 50% hardware sales and services line of revenue and the grants, contracts, and awards. Instead, what I was doing to pay for R&D outside of Kickstarter is I would go to pitch competitions, and I'll still do it. I am not afraid to go on stage to try and get a People's Choice vote for $5,000 to buy a forklift. It's not, but not beneath us, because that's not in our bill of materials. But anyway, things are really tight. And the other thing that we've really benefited from, kind of like Startup Chile, is these accelerator concepts. So we get into this program called Paralel 18, or Parallel 18, in Puerto Rico, that gives you $40,000, just like we got in Chile, to try and test out an idea in an island nation in a really cool place, not too far from Texas. Further than I realized when I applied. But so anyway, we get into this program. Conveniently, I get activated and have to go to Korea for a month. Right after we delivered our printer there. We had some teammates in there while I was in Korea. As I'm literally at the end of this experience, I'm at the DMZ, checking like online, getting ready to like fly back, and a Cat 5 hurricane is coming to Houston, Texas. What are we? A NASA spinoff from NASA Johnson Space Center. Where's NASA Johnson Space Center? It's in Houston, which, aside from teammates, we did have a teammate who lost a house. The personal damage and the impact to your business, that also means if you're a hardware company, you're not going to be shipping for a while. Trucks aren't going to come in, so you have like all revenue basically stalled because you can't get things in and out. In addition to, we had teammates on the roofs trying to like do check-ins throughout the day as like their whole neighborhood was flooded out. So anywho, I go down to Puerto Rico. My teammates, I relieve them, and as soon as I land, and I'm dog tired, right? Because I've just been 12 hours ahead. We see on the news that there's a hurricane coming towards PR, and I post on Facebook, has anyone ever been through a hurricane before? I think I'm going to go through one. And sure enough, the governor gets on TV and he's like, we're fixing to lose power and water for an indeterminate amount of time.
Puerto Rico, that could mean, yeah.
So that was a hurricane called Irma. So Irma comes through, Cat 5, takes out everything, including the apartment that we were in. And then I conveniently am activated in place by the Air Force. Right time, right place. So now I'm wearing a uniform, also supporting this accelerator that's on pause, and our neighbors. It was a very confusing time for everybody. And 2 weeks to the day later, a second hurricane comes through, and that was Maria, which most people are familiar with, and just like spews up everything that was untouched, basically, from Irma, and decimates the island. So we had a choice. We actually had the opportunity to leave PR and the program, and we decided to stay. And we ended up using the equipment that we had on site, the printers that were already there, and we said if it's designed by a Puerto Rican, we'll teach them how to design, and if the printer is used by a Puerto Rican for a Puerto Rican application, we will offer this in any feedstock, any resources we had for free. And the things that people made were not things that we expected, and it gave us a lot of social collateral on the island, including future follow-on funding, and we're so honored to have a presence there and teammates who live and maintain it.
The crisis became an opportunity for feedback.
Yeah.
And then this notion about printing from trash is something that you've talked about how hard it is to do. Why is it difficult, for one, and why is it something you want to chase after?
Yeah, I think our team likes wicked hard problems that are aligned with our social mission, which is a team that works hard in an open way to empower anyone, anywhere, anytime with the community. For us, the trash is really an opportunity to further reduce that cost, right? At our core, what I care about is economic empowerment. I come from Detroit. I still have family that works on the line, and I see the power that manufacturing can provide for people to support their communities. And I think we're also all inherently creative and builders and explorers. So the 3D printer is one way to help facilitate that from my perspective. We now have teammates that join our company because they love the garbage angle. But the problem with trash is not all trash is created equal. So initially, me and my peers globally that have thought a lot about this problem set, we're thinking about trash in landfills, and particularly water bottles. Turns out water bottles are like the worst to work with. We've bricked printers in the middle of the field with the Army. We've been really successful other times. They're just super variable. But what we've learned from the garbage conversation, too, is not all trash is created equal. Sometimes bottlers have different formulations from different factories, right? Sometimes trash is exposed to maybe weather conditions in one location and not in another. So there's a lot to think about that makes even 3D printing itself more complex. However, there are some waste streams we've targeted that are what we call clean and typed. So for example, there's an Army user in Missouri, and they have what's called the boneyard. Again, I love toilets, so I think this is awesome. And in the boneyard of what's this base, Fort Leonard Wood, there's like 200 porta potties that are destroyed. Porta potties are like big things of plastic, right? The blessing is all the plastic is the same. There's just a few fasteners on it. So if I can grind that up, I can turn a porta potty into potentially something useful. So I've started to target a lot of what we call like the non-sexy applications, the big dumb stuff that's more homogeneous types of plastic, as well as manufacturing waste. So, I've spent a lot of time talking to my dad who works at DTS and Romulus, and I just see like bins and bins of plastic caps and just dumb objects accrue from manufacturing applications. In Puerto Rico, we see that with the pharmaceutical company. So a lot of what we've doubled down on are like streams that are more sorted, where we can talk to the people that made the product to know the formulation, while we still work on landfill waste and things that are really complex and parallel.
And as you've gone through kind of exploring these new revenue streams, approaching a new market, looking at different type of trash collection, this has all been partially, I would imagine, informed from the lessons learned of launching in 2013, having to iterate along the way. For those out there who are like, I've got a real issue with blank. I want to change blank about the world. I hate that this is happening, and they want to start a business to do something about it. What are like the 3 things that they need to embrace and know going into that launch?
Yeah, so I would say the 3 things are: 1, get it out there, be ugly. Like, do not keep it in the bubble of like your lab, your mom, your partner, your neighbors. They all think you're awesome. And I think the best thing you can do, especially in hardware, is just to get it out there and get feedback. Because 9 times out of 10, how people use it, like what we found, isn't what you would anticipate, and it can be really surprising and beautiful. And then the people that give you that early feedback have an emotional connection to your product too. And so a lot of times they're really committed. Like we've become really good friends with some of our Kickstarter backers from 2013. But 1, yeah, definitely just start now, and then to be okay with it not being perfect, and understanding too, especially in hardware and a lot of times software services, it's going to be evolving over time. And then the third one I would say, and this is not a very popular opinion, so feel free to judge, but I think sometimes people feel like they have to get the funding first and have everything resourced. There are so many resources out there now for free for individuals, like from kids to retirees to start businesses using free resources and free support. So really lean into those communities because they want to advocate for your success. Not because maybe they can give you some financial resources or some tools, but a lot of times the organizers of these opportunities are big brands, right? Or they are family offices, or they are people that have the skill set you need. So you can get like second and tertiary benefit from applying to an accelerator, doing a pitch competition, or using some of the online tools that different organizations sponsor to help small businesses get started.
Shameless plug, CFE's Fuel program, up to $25,000 for your project or idea every single month. Submit your application and rolling basis online.
Yeah, that's a miss if you don't try it.
Right? Like
Yeah.
just free money.
Also, so what? You don't get in. I applied to be an astronaut. I'm not an astronaut, but
Yet.
you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? If we hadn't launched on Kickstarter, if we hadn't shared our idea with Startup Chile, none of this would have happened. So you just have to lean into it. Every time too that you apply for something and have to write down your idea or do that video or get up on stage. I used to throw up for like 5 or 6 years every single time. Each time you get a little bit better, right? Like clearly I'm not like an amazing public speaker, but
You're being very humble.
I'm a little bit more confident than I was 10 years ago, right? And I'm learning from engaging with people and getting a lot of those no's as well.
Love that, the ability to kind of iterate. To your point about every year since 2017, there's been some disaster knocking on the door.
Yeah.
So, you know, earlier this semester, you heard from Inder talk about how in 2020, he literally built a company for that moment in time to come to be applicable, and that did not pan out how he wanted. You built a company that had nothing to do with the pandemic, but then what happens? And there was
We were really cool for a hot minute.
Yeah? Okay, how so?
Well, so hospitals were running out of PPE. And not just that, like with our social mission, also like especially for those really small businesses or marginalized communities, they especially didn't have it because even the hospitals didn't have it. Well, we were in 60 countries. We have a big printer. With a big printer, it means you can do a lot of one thing or you can do a really big thing. Well, a lot of one thing could be the face shields, right, that we needed during COVID, and the hotspots were changing. So we saw, I get goosebumps still thinking about it, in multiple languages, governments sometimes pooling our printers together and users responding to their own community with their Gigabot, which was really cool. So that also, from a supply chain perspective and all the things around it and lockdowns made it so hard to keep our business going. But that opportunity and that reach back we had with our customers as part of our social mission also then got us more opportunities afterwards, and people really leaned into our product.
It sounds like it was kind of a bit of a bipolar experience because you had one where there's nothing but opportunity coming out because of the distribution that you already had, but then you also set up the company in a way where it's open source. Mm-hmm. You didn't go for any patents, you didn't do anything to protect it like a lot of times you'll hear companies doing with their technology, with their hardware. You decided to make this completely open to the world. What was that experience during COVID? And tell them kind of what happened there.
Yeah, the cool thing about it being open source is, especially when things were locked down, meant you could version and maintain it. So it allowed us to help people, and sometimes people had to modify their printer too to respond to the pandemic. So by not having those controls, we were able to support that. And then the people using our machine that were like critically were dependent on it, especially like in India and some areas that were just getting hit so hard, they were also giving us a lot of feedback. It really helped us also refine our support. So we have a knowledge base now that wasn't really fleshed out until then, and building out some of those mechanisms to better connect and provide remote help to the user.
But something came back to bite. Was there? I've heard you tell a COVID story about someone taking a piece of tech.
You have to remind me.
I think you talked about somebody taking a piece of the technology and otherwise replicating it elsewhere.
Oh yeah, so people do that. There are versions of our machine in other countries where we haven't sold to, and I think it's really cool. Some of our teammates, like, it's funny, it does like ruffle their feathers. They don't like it, but I think it's awesome when people to build a machine like ours. I do believe that you make more pie together. What's been interesting is one of those companies recently had an inbound to buy another printer from us, even though they had the parallel one. But yeah, it's been really cool.
And you were mentioning to me just recently that ultimately the word competitor is banned at your company. That seems completely out of what they would normally hear from any other entrepreneur. Why is that?
Yeah, I mean, I personally don't think it's very helpful. So in Re3D in our lexicon, what some people would call competitors, we call them peers. And it's all about framing, right? For example, I was on the phone. There's not that many people in what we call the pellet printing community. Again, we did Exuon to print with Flake, but it's basically at its core, it's what's called an FGF or a pellet printer. And there's not that many people just in what we call large format, so bigger than that desktop system. There's very few of us left. If you Google 3D printing, it's like bad news bears, right? There's a company going bankrupt and whatever every day. A lot of investors are very grumpy about it. Well, what are we facing right now? We're also facing a lot of supply chain challenges, right? For those of us that manufacture in the US, we're also trying to lean more and more into US-based sourcing. So I just think it's really dumb to consider someone a competitor and just to continue to run down your own path when we all know it's freaking hard. And now the media's figured it out too. So I was on the phone with a peer yesterday, and I was like, man, you can't tell me that you're able to get all the things that you need right now because we're a low volume industry. And he's like, no, we definitely can't. And I was like, are you guys trying to, clear made in the USA? And he's like, yeah, we are, just like you. And I was like, what can't you find? He's like, I'm having a heck of a time with screws and lead times. I'm like, I've got 2 screw guys for you in Ohio, and these bubbas can help you out. And he's like, what do you need? I'm like, I need extruder motors. I know we're gonna get bit by that at some point with tariffs and whatnot. We're already seeing it. And I can't find one that can move our screw fast enough in the US. And he's like, oh, I've got a motor guy in Iowa. And then we talked some more, and I was like, what would it look like if we purchased together? Because we're both low volume, so that gives this other guy in Iowa a bigger purchase order, and potentially will reduce the cost. And we'll openly share that same component in each of our products, even though we're competitors. And they were all for it. So I think there's a lot of benefit in forming those alliances and seeing each other as a peer. Also, it's just so hard. Like, it's great for Re3D and our peers, when we get together, you can cry together, you can laugh together when there's a crisis. Like, you kind of feel like, similar to being, a warfighter or in the Air Force, like, you're in the thick of it as a team.
That notion of service and your willingness to kind of come in and not just accept the framework of what is, but want to pioneer and adapt it. Is that something that you've picked up or was enhanced further by being in the military, or how has that shaped your view as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I think it's evolved over time. When I joined the Air Force, again, it was kind of selfish because I wanted to get more points on my astronaut application, which is an odd reason to join the military. But turns out I'm not alone, but there's about like a bunch of us in that habit. One thing that I think is interesting is, a lot of Re3D came out of our time in Central America and in Rwanda. But it very much resembles a lot of what I see in the military as well, and this desire for people to support their communities and to be independent and not be controlled, and to be creative, and so through that, I think Re3D has informed my perspective on humanity, and in the military. And in the military, shamelessly, we have borrowed a lot of things. Like, our team says. Is anyone here a veteran or in the reserves? Okay, cool. So you'll love this. We say everyone in our team knows bottom line up front. So there's a thing the military does, like little isms, where you'll write like a long email, but at the top you kind of have like, this is what it really means. It's called
Can you
a bluff.
bring that into civilian life? I would love that.
Yeah. So our team will sometimes do the bluff. We also have like checklists for everything, right? We're all about the certifications. I'm a real poop head if you're not at stand-up at 9 a.m. I'm like, come on, guys. When I'm a drill, I'm up by 6. I have, teammates, I don't know what time you got up, but much earlier. Like, you can be at work by 9 a.m. So there's certain things that definitely I know I'm, getting from the military. The cool thing, too, about being an officer in the Air Force, we like to think we're smart, so they make you do, a lot of schooling, a lot of leadership stuff, and make you read books, which I may not have prioritized running a business. But I do think it's probably helping me be a better advocate for my teammates and kind of being abreast on current leadership trends as well. It's self-serving to Re3D because part of how you compete in manufacturing is getting all the certifications. There's one called ISO 9000, there's safety stuff. Well, I learn about them on the military side, and I think been able to set the company up to be eligible for those certifications a little bit easier than maybe someone that didn't have that background. Also just being from Detroit, because we know manufacturing.
Just out of curiosity, what are your thoughts on the notion of a national requirement for service? Not necessarily the military, but be it for any type of public entity.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I won't speak on behalf of the company or the Air Force. I think that's a fabulous idea. I see, in the military side, other countries that have done it, and the people I meet or entrepreneurs that have had to do it, coming from other countries or our customers, they speak very highly of it, and just kind of recognizing how things are made. We had a conversation prior to this, and I've just been determined this year to figure out how the heck things happen. I realize I am a terrible officer and a terrible voter because I really, even up until this last week, still don't know all the nits of the House and the Senate and how things happen in committees. And I'm like, gosh darn it, man. I'm being impacted by this, my company is. I need to be more informed. So yeah, that's been, it's been cool having a company right now because manufacturing is a conversation that's relevant, and it's just making me more and more determined to dig in.
But I think having a national requirement to do a miracle or to help build a road or keep your forest clean just makes us better stewards of the assets we have, and to maybe feel confident having a voice. I think you guys should take advantage of it now. I think I waited way too late in my life after Re3D's genesis. I'm more determined to have that voice, but service can really inspire people to feel confident in that.
And see each other as fellow humans and citizens, and not just a label. If I can support that. All right, a couple student questions that came in that I really want to touch on here. Shadrach asked, what common entrepreneurial advice do you disagree with?
Advice?
What common entrepreneurial advice do you disagree with?
Oh, you mean investor advice? First of all, they're going to expect their money back in 18 months. If you do a framework, that's probably not going to happen. That's why there's so many bankruptcies. But yeah, I think there's a place for investment. I was definitely pursuing that. My first business and whatever, if I hadn't sold it. But yeah, you don't need an investor. You also don't need a patent. We're okay. I mean, maybe I'll go home and I'll get served at the office on Monday. But I mean, so far, so good. But, I think you don't have to do that, and you don't have to do business in the way that people advise you to. There's a thing called advisor whiplash. And if you were to have, 8 board members or 10 advisors, they're probably not all going to give the same advice. So ultimately, you're accomplished your business better than anyone else. So, we connect on LinkedIn or meet up afterwards. I hope some of us get that opportunity. It's quite possible that the advice I give you is going to really suck. And that you would do better, without my perspective. So again, I think you don't have to do things in a way that's prescribed in the book and exactly how people will tell you they need to be done.
2 things. To her point about meeting up that for advice she might give you after class over in 1180 ground floor of the Junior Center meets Nearby Commons, ask me anything session, immediately following class, have a question, you want to talk, anything you want to know, we'll be over there and there's pizza. Okay? Please pop over. Second thing, is what you said, is this humility that you exude of I'm not going to get advice. I don't know. I'm still figuring it out. I wish I knew more about being a business owner and all things. That notion that you refer to yourself as the catalyst of Re3D, can you just unpack that? Why?
Yeah, so my first degree was in biology, and there's this thing called catalyst, and so enzymes, right? They help accelerate things. And I don't know what this generation of the computers thinks. It's more like Culver's and design with them with us in the beginning, but I definitely know some of them call me the tornado behind stack. Because sometimes like there's forcing functions and I'm like, I don't care if I break my hand in the bucket. But yeah, so I think kind of naturally, and you guys are for kind of a top or a fast talker. I tend to like, kind of go at things hammer and like that. So I think it's represented by personality type. Secondly, these enzymes, these catalysts are attached to other things and they're part of the process, right? And that's kind of what I see in Re3D and what we do. And I don't really see myself, I don't really consider myself like a leader or feel like a CEO, but I do feel like I am everyone's number two, and I'm there to support them in the process. So for me, I think it's appropriate.
If you can find a boss who speaks and thinks and behaves that way, run at that opportunity. Second student question that came in that I want to touch on. Everybody is area, and kudos for this one. Just simply, what has surprised you most in your career?
People surprise me every day. So being dual-hatted as an officer in the National Guard and running Re3D, it had the opportunity to meet a lot of people. Also, our companies, service a lot of people, and no two people are the same. Because of that, they all view our hardware differently. They view their interactions with our team differently. We also do the same as Re3D. We just did it yesterday. We have monthly all hands, and the first thing we do in the beginning of all hands is somebody has to say our ethos and read them out loud. And then they say what it means to them. And some people now try to do it, 3 times or whatnot. And they'll comment that every time it's kind of about something else. And they're very simple ethos. But it kind of shows how, as humans, not only are we all different, we're all evolving. And I think it's good to be reminded of that with your product. It's kind of like, a living thing with in a really dynamic community.
Love that. Students, that's going to be part of your dense assignment, that notion of the ethos and what maybe outversion means to you. And I see that in Canvas. Please help me thank Samantha and come on over to One Way Joe.